Barry, you ready to get this going?
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, welcome everyone to our Winter Game Jam live stream. My name is Huck. I'm one of the admissions officers here at the Academy of Interactive Entertainment. Would you like to introduce yourself, Terry?
Absolutely. So I'm Terry Nguyen, one of the game programming instructors here at AIE Seattle, and just super excited to show off some of the work that our students have been up to. I've been primarily dealing with the year one side of things, but I've got a good level of contact with the year twos as well and their projects. But we'll talk about those at a later point in time.
I was going to say it's perfect that we're focusing on the year one games then. So we're going to be doing a later event to show off the year two games. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your experience as an instructor, just I guess watching over and facilitating the game jam.
Yeah. So overall, thinking about the game jam, it's a mixed bag for a lot of people. Not because of any horrible things that happen, but just thinking about all of the work, all of the time, and all of the stress, but also the joys of running into problems along the way, and then having to kind of figure out how exactly we're going to solve them.
The joys of running into problems. I feel like you're the only person I hear, you and the other programmers, who say it with such happiness in their voice. But yeah, I mean, you want to tell us a little bit about like the projects that ended up happening, the teams that kind of came about?
Yeah. So the two projects that I had the opportunity to kind of watch over were Outer Scout and Afterlight. Outer Scout is intended to be a sort of a 3D remake of Galaga, and kind of create a classic shmup. You've got a little ship, you can pilot it around, and the idea is that you can take aim and fire at a wave of enemy ships that come at you and take them out before they take you out. So that
Great.
was fun. We'll hear a little about how that did or did not happen, and we'll also hear about Afterlight, which is more of a
Hmm.
sort of a somewhat puzzle, but more so adventure of going on a journey with a ghost that you've encountered while waking up in this sort of odd, dark dungeon. And you're gonna need that ghost to make your way through this whole adventure, because if you don't, you're gonna be stuck there till the end of time.
Lovely. Very relatable. And Terry, would you mind just going back? Because I know that I had asked you this question a little while back. What is a shmup?
Shmup. Shmup is a abbreviation, or just a contraction for a shoot 'em up. So it's one of those classic games where you have typically some kind of ship, some kind of fighter ship, or some kind of spaceship in this case, and half the fun comes from piloting it around left and right, sometimes even forward and back, and just shooting just a lot of bullets, a lot of the space lasers and whatnot flying on screen, and you got to dodge the space bullets that are coming towards you.
Yeah. Thanks for that breakdown. I guess I'll break down a bit of the event as well. Uh, so with this stream, our intention is to show off the games, but also just let the students have an opportunity to kind of talk through some of their challenges, what worked, what didn't work, and just speak uniquely about their experience and talk a little bit about how AIE has helped to, expose them to this and prepare them for situations much like this. So now with Terry's breakdown of what a shmup is, let's go ahead and let some of the students talk about Outer Scout, our first project. So keep your eyes peeled.
I guess the idea, we started rather simple with a pretty much just Galaga, but in a three-dimensional space with three-dimensional assets. There's been quite a few changes, especially when it comes to inputs. It was one input and then it changed right towards the end, which was an interesting choice, but
You're talking about the change from using.
yeah, going from mouse to keyboard. Because with mouse it kept overshooting and it kind of had a laggy feel that wasn't quite what they were looking for, although it did have, some people did enjoy it. It wasn't too much of a game breaker to have it either way. Either way could work, and so it in the essence of time, because it is a game jam, sometimes you just need to put things aside and move forward.
What's your take on it? Do you have a preference over one or the other?
The keyboard seems a bit chunky and rigid, whereas we're in space. Things are gonna flow and inertia is a thing, so I don't know. That was my opinion, but I let the team do what they wanted to do. Along the art side, there was a lot of enemy assets, which I think they're trying to implement now. So there was a lot of enemy assets that we have, and we even had a boss model that we were hoping to do. That was something that we had but didn't quite get implemented because, again, we were running with one coder, and so there was also some of that issue of people taking a long time to try to figure out the control schemes. And also some of the, I believe it was enemy movement, trying to get that to work properly. I do know that putting it in orthographic view definitely defeats the purpose of a 3D game, and defeats the purpose of 3D assets. It also, having it in orthographic, for some reason, Unreal wasn't taking the height maps properly, and so textures were displaying weird. It probably would have saved us a lot of time being like, oh, the orthographic's messing up our textures. Let's just put it back into perspective. If we had just, I don't know, given up on that issue there, might have saved us some finagling when it comes to adding in the assets and getting them to look right. A couple of the ships, I know we had two people plus myself working on the ship designs. There was a couple ships that I don't think have made it into the game yet, but they're sort of Star Foxy, you know, that retro. I don't know if it's the 80s. I'm not good with time periods. But sort of that type of feel. I think one of them we kind of nicknamed like the parrot. Might be differently named now. Yeah, like a parrot ship. It would follow the boss ship around. That was the initial hope if we got the boss implemented. Because they're space pirates. So have a ship that's like a little parrot. Follows the bad guy around. Well, initially, when we were thinking color schemes and the original concept of the game, it was sort of like a child's eye, a child's point of view, and so the colors were initially supposed to be very bright. It's why most of the UI assets are hand-drawn. Because it's supposed to have more of that crayon drawn, this kid's going on a story. He's got his good ship, and then he's fighting space pirates. It exploring through their imagination. But that's, in the end, that got resolved. So some of those assets didn't quite make it in. But overall, because some of those assets didn't get in, we got a much more cohesive appearance. It did lose a little bit of that initial idea of childlikeness, though.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah, and that's always a challenge, right? Because oftentimes, even with like design, even with code, there's always a lot of things that get made that don't quite make it in.
Yeah, which is natural. Like, I think it's hairy, but if like you ship everything that you put into the game, the worst thing is also going to be in that game, so. I guess doing a game jam is different than our current classes. We were actually able to coordinate and work with the students from design and programming, which honestly, I prefer having the group experience of building something. It's good to have like a larger goal in sight. Like, oh, I'm not just making this for a grade. I'm making this so that we can all work together to make something. And there's some sort of feeling of a bigger purpose that is honestly quite enjoyable. I feel like that can be said for a lot of things in life, personally. But there was some there's always tensions when it comes to working with a larger group and trying to be like, okay, this kind of needs to get done, and people are struggling on like how it should be done, or I prefer this, I prefer that. So it's not just, oh, this is my own project that I'm working on, I'll make it how I want. It's people also are putting in their input, and because this is a group project, I need to also learn how to compromise and do what's best for the group instead of just what I prefer. I mean, overall, it was stress, chaos, but fun. And it was really enjoyable once everything got done. It was just overall enjoyable working as a team, and I feel like our team had some really good cohesion, so I'd do it again.
What a great way to end that off. Well, welcome back, Terry. You're looking fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I think it became apparent over the course of that you were the one to interview that student. So you mind telling us a little bit about that student and then sort of your experience in like watching over that specific group?
Yeah. Kari and the rest of the team had quite the task assigned to them of, well, rather, they chose this task of wanting to recreate
Kudos to
Galaga.
themselves.
Yeah, and they made a pretty good jump at trying to build everything out, recreating the enemy ships, trying to go through and build out a player that can navigate this 2D space and actually fire at enemies. But it was also really challenging for them. As mentioned, it is a relatively shorter time frame, and you have to kind of go through and think of the idea. So Wednesday was when they had the idea put together. And then Thursday, they kind of got something put together, but it wasn't until Friday that the game actually started being playable, that there were actually, not just one test enemy on the screen, but like multiple enemies that were coming in from the side and the other side. And you had to try to shoot all of them down before they shot you down. So it was a little bit of a challenge to get things going. It kind
Yeah.
of really makes you appreciate just like how much work went into those older, more, they look really simple because they don't have all the fancy graphics.
Mhm.
There's a lot of like math and there's a lot of logic and programming that goes into
A lot of
building
moving
these.
parts.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, we got the student point of view, but I also very much want to hear your point of view in terms of like if you had students come in, try to make a very similar project, what were some of the takeaways that you had from this that you might provide advice for on future jams?
Yeah. I think, the biggest one that I always reiterate every time, so this one isn't new, but the biggest one is always to try to get something working sooner than later, right? Like the longer it takes to get to something that's buildable, that's playable, that's testable, the
Yeah.
more risk it is because you're building something that you don't even know if it's any good, right? And if you don't know it's any good, you don't know if you have a good foundation to continue building off of because games is such an iterative process, right? Like we build
Yeah.
things and we have to try to just see like, does it stick? Does the player think it's fun? Does the player think, if not fun, then is it engaging? And going through and doing that is even more challenging on a short time frame, like what we had for this game jam, since we did it completely during class hours. The start of our Wednesday and the end of our
Mhm.
Friday was realistically all the time that they had.
Yeah. I remember doing a game jam when I was much younger, but definitely just a lot of crunch hours, it felt like. So definitely just getting the thing off the ground and a lot of play testing. So I'm glad to see that they ended with a product and hear that Kari, walked away with a product that they felt, was a fun process that they got to take some pride in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also find it really encouraging to hear that was completely unprompted. So appreciate it. But
You weren't like, "Hey, if you say the nice thing, I'll give you this."
That's right. That's right. But looking at it as a faculty member, um, the game jam really serves as a proxy for how are the students going to do during the end of year project, right? Because
Mhm.
one of the things that I think is really cool about AIE in the space is that we don't do these things completely in isolation, right? We do spend some
Yeah.
time separately as programming, separately as game art and animation, separately as
Hmm.
game design and production, in our respective rooms.
Yeah.
But when it comes time to actually put it all together, every opportunity that they have to practice that always shows new ways of solving problems, new ways of collaborating with the students, and trying to figure out what is a better, more healthier production process.
Yeah.
So, in the same vein of the question you had earlier, one of the things I want to kind of stress is that, even though there's only that Wednesday to Friday section, I really try to ask people to scope for the time that you have in the classroom, right?
Yeah.
Because if you were to treat it like a job, you only have that time when you're in the office, right? You shouldn't be planning around taking work home. You should be planning to work extra hours. So I always try to stress that whenever you take on a project like this, it's fine if you want to work on it outside of office hours, so long as, well, that's a whole other story. But if you're gonna do that, that should be something extra. It should never be
Yeah.
expected upon anybody.
Yeah. Um, Much in the same way that you were like, hey, this is something that I really appreciate about AIE is that emphasis on having those healthy boundaries in terms of, hey, you should be able to get everything that you need done here, but if you want to keep working on it, you can. So with that in mind, I mean, do you want to tell us a little bit about the next student project that we have coming up?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Before I do that, I just want to give a quick shout out to the Outer Scout team. I'm really happy to see all the stuff that they were able to put together, that they were able to not only get everything working, and they had an absolutely brutal level put together that was super challenging to playtest during the final set of presentations.
Mhm.
But it works, and I think that's really really admirable. A lot of games, you start them
Yeah.
and they never finish. So even though it's just a little prototype, a little short game, they definitely
Mhm.
put something together.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but yeah, cool. Let me pop over here. So the second project that we've got going for the stream is going to be Afterlight. Afterlight is another year one game jam project. And Afterlight, as mentioned, is all about creating this first person puzzle adventure game where you're going to go through and take this ghost through from start to finish in order to navigate all the puzzles that they've got around them. So
Mhm.
I'll leave most of the initial introduction to that team. But one thing I should note is that it is a first-person game, so be advised that if you don't do all too well with dark first-person spaces, just make sure to take care of yourself as you watch the gameplay.
Yeah, yeah. Just do what I do for horror movies and just have one hand right in front of your face the whole time. But yeah,
I
let's
think
learn
it
a
was
bit more
actually
about
pretty close to
Afterlight.
the concept because we had envisioned for our team specifically, we had less artists than the others. It was me and 3 others, and I was really confident in our abilities, but I didn't take it into account of say you can have the best artist in the world, but sometimes they're also going through something or something real life will happen in the way to interfere with a game jam, and that was something I did not think would even happen because I was like, oh yeah, we have a really good artist. I'm really sure that it'll be fine. And then if you have real life things that come up that will interfere with your hours here and take away. So instead of 4 artists, now we're down to 2, or now we're down to 1. Sometimes it's I didn't think that would be a case, because you fundamentally think, oh yeah, this is a great team. They make really great work, but then you realize yeah, artists are also people, so I think that's something I just didn't think about whatsoever when we're doing that. But aside from that, though, I think because I was really they're really capable artists. I think it was able to pull around the end. But I think that's something I just didn't think of right in the beginning, because you can you think, oh yeah, the best artist in the world. You don't think that anything would hinder that outside of things or external factors. So other than that, though, it's my first ever game jam as well. So I think I was kind of in overdrive to also make sure we stayed on time. Just be oh yeah, can we finish this on this time? Finish this by this. Let's have these assets by this. And I think that really helped. Just keeping structure, and communication. But yeah. I was very surprised. And it was fun though. It's fun surprises you learn along the way. So I would say other than, sometimes an artist would have to drop out for a few hours, trying to work with like the little things. It's so like I'm just the art side, right? I didn't know anything about design. I didn't know anything about programming, and you know, when you're art lead, people are asking you like, oh hey, like do you have this asset? And we're like, oh yeah, we already do. And you know, we didn't communicate at all. So really learning to like, oh yeah, like talk to the other disciplines. That was a huge thing that I realized we had to like really work on, because like they would be scrambling for assets that we already had made. And then also kind of like seeing how the vision was overall implemented. So I think that to have like a cohesive game, you have to really early on understand the style, kind of like what you're going for. So I made a lot of concept art in the beginning. So we're like, okay, this is kind of like the color scheme we're gonna go for. This is kind of like the vibe, and we kind of want to keep that vision throughout. And so when the designers say are like implementing things for the levels, like lanterns and things like, you know, like that, we're like, oh wait, like let's change the color though. Let's like, you know, edit this little this and things that, you know, they wouldn't really think of either. And so it's a really involved process throughout. Or like say we have this trigger box in the game, and oh man, I hated that thing when it first got implemented. I was like, this is so ugly. And I wouldn't have known unless I was like really like, you know, checking all the other like things, you know, just to make sure like, okay, this is what we created. How does it look like in game? Which was so surprising to me, because I was like, oh my gosh, like no, or like I'd be like, oh yeah, this looks cool. Because I think when you're making art, you know, you're just making it. You're not really sure, you know, how it's gonna look like in the very end until it's like almost the very end. Because like as much as we can do, implementing it within, like they're doing so much behind the scenes we don't even realize in terms of like creating these puzzles and platforms and things that like are like kind of like the finalizing of the game. So I think just that was like really surprising to me. I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is how it looks, that's so cool. Or like, oh no, this is how this looks, let's change it really quick. But yeah, just like that, I feel like those are just things that I learned from working with new, you know, programs and designers. So it was pretty fun. A long-winded explanation to say.
No, this is great. The less talking I have to do.
I have to say, but this is like a joint interview, you know. Usually there's just as many answers I give. I would imagine there's as many questions, you know.
I mean, we've already like gone off script.
Well, there was only one bullet point on there to begin with.
That's true. I mean, the general question.
Okay.
So it sounds like then, you know, you had this idea of what the game is going to be, and then you played the game, saw the
Yeah.
exactly the way you thought it, or wait, don't leave me here.
Yeah, there's like a few more things, you know, or like they would have like ideas of, like, oh, this building will, or this door opens like this, and so we have to make a door real quick, or things open like this, or say they want like you know, the level ends, how does it end, you know, what does that look like? And I was working a lot with like Justin, like, oh, we can have like a little portal so you go through the next place, or, you know, like kind of indicate to the players but in a visual way, which I thought was pretty neat. But yeah, just overall, just kind of like really working with like the other designers, because they like, your vision has to meld together in the end. And like, as much as like I was imagining how the game would look like, and, you know, universally agree with the artist, you know, seeing it, you know, you have to be really involved to make sure that actually happens. But yeah, so, which made it fun. I feel like it was a lot of talking, a lot of communication, but yeah. We're all like, we made sure we're all sitting like right next to it, so I could just like zoom over, or roll over to here and be like, oh, how's this going, and how's this going? And I'm sure like even my experience is probably way different than like everybody else's, because like I was art lead, but you know, we had like, you know, the design lead and like, you know, Sage doing coding by themselves, and so like it was really interesting to see how like all kind of came together. Yeah, like, because for classwork it was kind of like a lot of you, like I would have an idea, but it's a lot of like voting, you know. I don't want to like just be like, oh yeah, I have this really like idea, guys, let's do it. I want to make sure like everyone is happy with what we're working on, and like really is passionate about what we're working on as well. And that was something really important to me as well when I became art lead, because I know like artists got to be inspired, and that was something that when we're making like assets for the catacomb, I feel like if some of them were like, I don't know if this is, you know, really something I want on like my portfolio, or like I'm not really the most proud of it, like this piece or this skeleton or whatever, and I'll be like, then make something you are proud of it. Like, why don't you make like a really elaborate tombstone? Why don't you do this and this, you know? And so there's little Easter eggs in there from some of the artists for like their own personal touch that really made them happy to work on the project. But I think finding that, like, you know, like as much as like one person can have like this general little ghost concept, unless the whole team is about it, you know, it's not gonna work out. So shout out to Matt. Especially because, like, I don't know, this is my first time as Arlie too, so I just really want to make everyone involved. And I know, like, there's some kind of authority you should have, or like, oh, this should be done, and like, you have like a final say. But like, to me, I was like, oh, these are still my classmates, these are still my friends. I want them to have a good time, especially because it's a game jam. It should be low effort, and like, that's something I realized as well through in this. Like, sometimes, like, you gotta motivate them, like, oh, you know, it's okay, guys. You know, it's not that much pressure. It's just like a fun little project, you know, and you're not being graded on it. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Like, who cares about the topology? It's okay. It's okay. Like, it'll be fine. But I feel like that was more what my focus was. Yeah, like as we're all working together, make it like I would even check in with like designers, like, how you feeling? You know, or like, if I see someone really stressed, be like, how you just let's just take a breather. You know, this is just a game jam. There's no pressure. Because I feel like that's the goal for this kind of stuff. And especially as we're working together, I think it's really easy for you to feel stressed and feel like, oh, everyone's depending on me, or like, oh, this person needs this or this person needs that. So yeah, I feel like as we're working together, I think that's really important to kind of just keep it like a low stakes environment, even if there are stakes, you know, just for your mentality. Because I think that's how you get really good work. Because you get people that are like motivated to do this, and you're like, oh, I'm happy to be here, and like I want to be working on it. You hear that? Not burnt out, even though it's only 2.5 weeks. And it's crazy because some of us do work outside of this, like for like the voice acting and stuff like that. I was telling Ron, who does like VFX for us, that like, hey, like, wouldn't it be so kind of fun? Like, you do voice acting outside if, you know, little Terry had like little voice lines, and so I came up with like a really like impromptu script, like, you know, like, you help me, I'll help you, and like little things that he could say. And then Ron like just made that night, for like Thursday night into Friday to like upload it and everything. And he made a bunch of like even like little like quirks, like, you know, little sound effects, simultaneously also making a theme song for the game. And like did that all outside of class, which he didn't have to do. Or, you know, like, I'm making like substance designer textures like at like 1 in the morning just for fun, you know, just because I was like, oh, why not? I'm awake, I'm doing this, you know. And I feel like that, like, because everyone liked the project, they wanted to do these kind of things. It was fun for them too, like, to explore new avenues. And, you know, like, we never make games, you know, in our department at least. Like, we're just making art. So like for the artists, we were like, wow, this is so cool. But yeah, it was really interesting. Like, even though there was kind of like a time constraint, like, I think the passion really showed through, because we were like, it's whatever, you know, we still want to work on it. So
Awesome. I think you owe the audience a bit of an apology, Terry, because I know you captured that gameplay.
Well, you know, I did give people a warning. If you are a little prone to motion, I do play like a little bit of a wacky control scheme.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also what makes you so good at games. So for anyone wondering, Terry is very good at games. But yeah, I mean, Kita talking about the entire process, I think it's very different, the sort of outlook you get as a designer, leading parts of the team in a project versus sort of working on your own projects. So, I mean, how does it feel as an instructor just seeing, you know, some of the students step up, like whether the ones you expect or not?
Yeah. I think it's always interesting because the type of work is different, right? Like one of the questions I had asked was, you know, what's the difference between working on a game jam project versus working on your regular coursework? And it's true. You know, one of the realities is that when you're working on your art assets in isolation, you mostly just have to make something, you know, that obviously still works, obviously still needs to conform to the spec, but it's a whole nother ball game when you need to integrate it into a game, make sure that it's cohesive, that it makes sense, that it's conveying the correct message to the player, right? Like if I have, say, for example, a lantern, it should look like a lantern, but it should also be sized like a lantern, behave like a lantern. It's light up. And that's part of the considerations you have to make in addition to making it work in this whole landscape of assets, right? Everything needs to look consistent. Everything needs to work together.
And then, you spoke a little bit about major and minor production much earlier in the stream. For those at home who maybe don't know about that part of the project in AIE's pipeline, would you mind sort of like expounding on that?
Yeah, yeah. As mentioned, one of the cool parts is that the end of year project, or what we call minor and major production internally, is a collaboration between all three of the departments on the game side of things. Our
Hmm.
VFX department has its own production project that it works on. But for the game side, we do collaborate with all three of the game-centric departments, bring them together to take a game basically from concept to prototype to implementation, and actually carry it all the way through, whether challenging or otherwise. So it's a big journey and it's a big leap. It's longer in year 2 than it is in year 1. Year 1 is really more of a practice run for it,
Yeah.
but also because for a lot of people it's their first major project, right? Not everyone comes into
Hmm.
AIE with a lot of existing experience. Not everyone even comes into AIE with a lot of like hobbyist experience. So we really want to create that opportunity for people to really get together with other people and make something cool.
Yeah, and I mean, given that we have, in essence, three different programs running at the same time when it comes to the game jams in terms of art, programming, and design. In your experience, I mean, have you seen students who start off in one stream and they're like locked into that, go like, "Hey, maybe I'm a bit more open to this," and sort of explore that, or like wind up hanging out in your room or something a bit more, your
Yeah.
classroom to clarify.
Absolutely. So, one of the neat parts is if you ever ask one of our admissions advisors or officers for a tour, they'll probably tell you that here we are. Here's Studio A, here's B and C and D, and that's the campus. And we do this so that we can have this nice little like close-knit community. We do often see a lot of designers and artists popping in from time to time just to say hi, to hang out, or say like how are things going. And usually someone like Christian or Sage might pop up and say, oh, it's going. I've been working on this problem for hours on end and it doesn't work. And, you kind of share the misery, kind of stew in that pain and suffering together, of course.
At least they say it while they're smiling. But yeah, I mean, when it came to some of the challenges that you see the students run into, I mean, what's some of the advice generally that you would give, say, like some of the viewers who may not have done a game jam or a collaborative project like that? Like, what's some just general advice that you would give a newbie?
Yeah, if it's your first time doing a game jam, which by the way, we do have a global game jam coming up this week. Some jam sites have already started, but yeah, it's not too late. If you're in the Seattle area, there are jam sites you can join up as well. But putting all of that aside for a moment, yeah, thinking of general advice would be to, go into it knowing that you're going to be making something and you want to be able to finish that something no matter what it is. So whether it's making a puzzle adventure game, whether it's making a shmup, whether it's making a simple visual novel or an RPG, just kind of go into the mindset that you're just going to make something and you're going to have a lot of fun with the process of creating it, which I think is the other key part. You know, um,
Yeah.
it might seem like a super cut and dry process of programming or making models or pulling up some spreadsheet or some document to plan out like how this game is going to be put together. But there's a lot of fun in the process, what I've been calling suffering. But there's a lot of fun in the process of problem solving, right? Say, for example, one of the challenges that Afterlight team had was how exactly do we train the player to know that they can actually not only pick up the ghost, but throw the ghost around. That was one of the sort of more
Hmm.
confusing things that they had to do. And so one of the mechanics, or one of the ways that they ended up introducing that mechanic was to create a space where you couldn't actually get to it. You had to throw the ghost. You had to throw them into the little window and have them land on the button in order to open up the door to
Hmm.
continue to progress.
You didn't think that signposting, like with the yellow paint or with like a sign, would be appropriate
It
either?
could work. It could work. As much as we like to meme about the yellow paint, there could be some merit in that. But the other catch is that every game is different. That's both a curse and
Hmm.
a blessing. It's different because you might put yellow paint down by the door or the button, I suppose, but you may not necessarily know that that means throwing something over there. It could just be like, oh, I see yellow paint. clearly I need to go over there. I can't go over there. How do I walk over there? I'm stuck. I'm stuck forever. So you might say like, oh, maybe I need to have a different color paint. Maybe I need to have glow in the dark yellow
Sure.
paint. And then it's like, oh, okay, glow in the dark yellow paint. I could not only see it, but oh, I still can't get to it. So maybe you'll have blue glow in the dark paint so that it says not only can you throw something over here, but it needs to be the ghost, right? The ghost that is intended to be thrown over.
Okay. And then I know that we're talking a lot about student experience, but I just have to ask. I mean, the students go through so many ideas. They have so many cool things that, maybe don't get the traction, or maybe they don't convey it in such a way that the rest of the team gets on board. But I mean, was there a game project or like a game pitch from this most recent jam that you were sad didn't go through?
Ooh, sad that it didn't go through. You know, I think part of the original design for Afterlight was they were trying to go for a little bit more of a like Portal-esque puzzle adventure. I did mention that it's puzzle, but it's a little light on the puzzle. You don't necessarily spend hours and
Mhm.
hours, or well, maybe not hours, but you don't spend like half an hour trying to like figure out like where do I throw Terry, where do I sort of position myself so that I can still get to Terry when I head over to this one spot. It's a little bit more of a focus on your journey, the narrative process of kind of bonding with the ghost over time and figuring out ways you can kind of use them to progress together. Of course, you can't leave the ghost behind, but
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen them lead into that more. But I also totally understand that it's really hard to design interesting puzzles in such a short amount of time, right?
Yeah,
It's really hard to know where players
definitely.
are going to get stuck, where players might even soft lock themselves and be unable to progress. It's hard to figure out like how do we convey what we're trying to do to the player while also trying to make sure that they can own the process. It's the player that solved the problem, not that we just simply gave it to you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for answering all of the questions, and thank you for, going through and interviewing our students here, Terry. I'm really glad that we got to hear some of their perspectives. But I think with that, I mean, we can start closing up. I know that the year two games, we want to spend some time showing off. So while we don't have a concrete date for that quite yet, y'all just keep an eye on this channel. We will be going live a lot more with some of the student projects, some of the things that we have going on campus. Speaking of which, we do have an open house happening on the 1st of February. And I should also mention, you had brought up Global Game Jam. Aren't we one of the jam sites?
Yeah. If you head over to the Global Game Jam website and just search for jam sites in the Seattle area, you'll find that Seattle Indies is hosting one, and we'll be making sure that we're open on Saturday for people to just come on in and work.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Terry. Really appreciate your time, and you sharing some of your endless, boundless wisdom with us. So, with that, I mean, thank you all for tuning in. We look forward to showing you more projects and you joining us next time. If you have additional questions, or you feel like some of the information, you want to get more, you want to find out how you can get involved in this process, definitely check out our website. I've already sent the ticker to go along the bottom. Feels very newsy. Feel free to check us out there. If you have any sorts of questions, there is contact information on there. Also, just feel free to reach out to us at any point. But till next time, everyone, same bat time, same bat channel. Hope you all have a good rest of your evening.
Peace
Thanks,
out.
Terry.
Woo!
Woo!